So where have we got to so far? Heidegger analyzes the modern age as the atomic age and thinks about its promise to make us happy by fulfilling all our desires, and understands that promise of great happiness as a distraction and a great threat. A great threat because it might distract us from things that belong to us more fundamentally, more profoundly as human beings, which is our capacity to think. We'll be so busy with practical plans, forgetting what we want, that we'll forget to think about the meaning of what we want, whether we should want it, what would it mean to get it. And his solution to this problem is two simple things in made-up language. And the first of them is releasement toward things, which is introduced here in the middle paragraph of page 54. And what is this? Well, releasement toward is sort of what we mean slangily when we say being cool about something. And this is our attitude, or what he says our attitude ought to be toward the things of technology and the power of technology. That we should simply be cool about them. That we take them when they help, and we're ready to let them go as not directed at our fundamental problems, not ultimately important. And he says it would be foolish to take the attitude that modern technology doesn't work. It clearly is very powerful. Nor should we deny that it gets us things which, as human beings, we necessarily do want. Some of the things it gives are merely nice and enjoyable, and some are essential. And Heidegger says there is nothing reasonable about being hostile to that and trying to find some way to directly reject it. But that to submit to it, get lost in it, to obey the demands of our technology, that would be a big mistake. That we need some middle position between somehow being enemies of technology and being the servants of the new technology. And I think, in the modern world, we all understand what it is to be servant. We all have technical devices, and we know what it's like when they're not working. They seem to interrupt our life, and there are extreme frustrations to get them back together, back working, and we get these little glimpses of being the servant of our tools, rather than making the tools serve us. It's a very common experience in modern life, even when we work. Think about the money it takes to get them and what we have to do in order to get that money. Rousseau would diagnose this problem quite well. We tend to serve our tools rather than when they ought to serve us. And so Heidegger's solution is this thing that he puts the label releasement toward things on. So we should simply take them for the good they do, but be careful that we do not respond to their demands. We don't have them dictate to us what we want. You may know the common saying, to somebody who has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And that becomes a more and more common saying. And perhaps that's because these problems of technology are on our minds as modern citizens. But that is some kind of image of what Heidegger is talking about and saying we should avoid. That your tools can conform your actions to what the tools can do. And we should try to avoid that, to use the tools when we want them to do something, but not be dictated too, and not have them tyrannize over us, not have them make us their servants. So, so releasement is, in a way, a negative thing. It says yes and no. So it's a way to avoid the power, the extreme power of the tools. And here on page 55, in the first full paragraph, he begins to explore openness to the mystery. And that also is simple for all the advancement of Heidegger's thinking, for all the consistency and coherence of his way of expressing it. Whatever he thinks tends always to come down to something simple. And what does he say? That we have to be open, be meditative, be listening for the meaning of our technology. We need releasement toward things so that meaning, the way the technology naturally operates, doesn't become the power in our life, doesn't determine what we do and what we want to do. But at the same time, in the modern age, since the tools have tremendous power, and because they can't be contained, no human force can limit them or dictate them or point them in one direction and deny them from going in somewhere other direction if that's where they're headed. Since the technology does have a meaning, we should be open to finding out that meaning. So it's a mystery because we don't know it yet, and we have to stay open. And this relates back to the problem of having a place to be, having a hometown, which is on Heidegger's mind because he's giving a speech in his hometown. And then relates back again to the thing he offers us as an important truth, that nothing good can be done by human beings unless they grow down into a particular soil. You have to fix yourself somewhere and put your roots down to get strength from that particular place. And Heidegger wants us to practice this openness to the mystery because we cannot quite imagine how that can be done in the modern world. After all, science seems to have taken away the particularity of particular places from us. You can imagine that in the naive pre-modern world without our science, it was possible to think of yourself as having a homeland and belonging there, and that you think that the places were distinctively different. But in the world of modern science, once we discover that the fixed reality, say, are the atoms, how could we maintain that belief that we have a place to be? And then if we need a place to be in order to do anything good, that inability to have a belief that you have a place to be would threaten the importance of your life. If you can't think where you belong, then you can't know where to put down roots in order to grow up and bloom and have fruit. So, but this is a problem with science. That why should Kirkuk be a place that is somehow different from any other city? Why should it be united to Erbil and Sulaymaniyah and not to Basra and Baghdad? What's different about it? They're all made of the same atoms. And this is the problem that modern science gives us. We would like there perhaps to be an answer why one place is different. And some people want that to be an answer. Some people are happy to run away from the answer. I'm not trying to settle that, but just to show what's at stake is the question. We would like, it's a human instinct to prefer places to be different from another. And some people find a great joy in getting free from that. But we don't seem to have a choice of being one or the other in the modern world because technology is taking the difference away from us. The atoms don't show, the atoms of Kirkuk don't show that it should be in one nation or another. That's a mere convention. And the indifference of that city seems to be a thing produced by science, whether we want it to be so or not. In the older world, you could think of, say, Kurds as a mountain people and therefore belonging somewhere and essentially different from other parts of the earth. But who could maintain such a belief in the modern world? We'd have to find other grounds, and maybe we can find them. Maybe we should look, maybe we shouldn't. I'm not trying to get into that discussion, but just to talk about what's at stake. We saw Heidegger talking about it in his own context. This composer is important because he's from here, and the Germany of his day is divided by the end of the Second World War, and half of it is in the Soviet Union, and half is aligned with the West. And the great powers of the West. But he wants to say, we German places, we have done great things in the past and we need to stay true to the past. But then how can we in the atomic age when it seems that even if we found a difference in atomic structure that showed one place is different from another, the atoms are not real things in the atomic world because they disappear into the continuum of atoms and energy, and anything by modern science can be made into anything else. So even if we could find a reason to say that the Germans are different from the French and the German land is somehow scientifically and essentially a different place with different people, that would only be a recognition that that's the way it is now. And if we want to change it because of the tremendous power of modern science, we could. And so the character of things won't settle that question for us. And it would take meditative thinking to try to come up with a reason. And Heidegger doesn't think that we are very far along with that, and thinks in some way that we just have to wait for an answer to suggest itself, in the same way that a farmer will plant seeds in the spring and have to wait for fall in order to harvest them. So the crops that might be planted now cannot be harvested yet, and we are in that same position for thinking about where we belong, because science has taken away the notion of truly belonging anywhere away from us. And Heidegger's only advice is to say that we should think and be ready to accept an answer if it appears. And that is openness to the mystery. And it addresses this problem of trying to think about what it means for somebody, and in this case a composer, for somebody to be somewhere. And because he was from that place and stayed true to it, he managed to produce something good. But how could we follow that example now, since we live in the modern age, which gives us an uncertain relation to all different places and to the very notion that we might belong to one rather than to another?